Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank my two colleagues from the other side of the aisle for joining with us today in this colloquy. And let me say how proud I was as a Republican senator from Mississippi to stand shoulder to shoulder with my colleague from Maryland, Ben Cardin. I can tell you he has, there are probably many places in Maryland he would rather have been at the beginning of July 2014. But he is someone who, year after year, has taken the time to travel to sometimes some rather unknown capital cities like Baku or Chisinau, Moldova, and represent the United States in our partnership with the OSCE on the Helsinki Commission. As Senator Cardin said, the 1975 final act of the Helsinki Commission recognized 10 principles that 57 countries in Europe and Eurasia said we believe we can stand by and live with and live under. Issues such as territorial integrity, sovereignty, refraining from the use of force, very important cornerstones of peace and democracy and self-determination and rule of law in Europe. And it is certainly a fact that is well known within the OSCE and with the delegations that come from far and wide to attend these, that Ben Cardin is respected internationally, that his word carries some weight, that he speaks on behalf of the United States of America and on behalf of the OSCE countries with authority, with even-handedness and fairness. And so I think it meant a lot, Madam President, for someone of Senator Cardin's stature to come forward and present these. And indeed, we did have an overwhelming support for the supplemental item authored by Senator Cardin. The amendments to water it down by the Russian delegation were rejected time and again by overwhelming votes. And then in the end, the final resolution was adopted by over 90 votes in favor of the Cardin resolution and only 30 votes against it. Of course, the delegates from the Russian Federation and several of their closest allies and neighbors voted against it. But country after country, delegation after delegation, small brave nation after small brave nation voted in favor of it, because internationally we realize that the words of the resolution were correct. The action of Russia in Crimea and invading this defenseless peninsula and annexing it illegally, that action violated all 10 principles of the Helsinki Final Act, and it needed to be said. And it needed to be said not only by the United Nations, which has in effect said this in the General Assembly, it needed not only to be said by a major power like the United States of America through our State Department and through the Congress, but it also needed to be said by the collective body that represents these 57 countries from Europe and Eurasia. So at this point, Madam President, I'm going to ask that the final supplemental item, as adopted by the by the Parliamentary Assembly, be inserted in full in the congressional record at this time.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Now, it may be that Senator Harkin will want to touch on this issue also, but it is, I think, significant that we have such great leadership in both bodies, in the Senate and in the House, with the OSCE, people who are willing to take the time to get to know our European neighbors at the parliamentary level and have that exchange there. People like Congressman Robert Adderholt, who is a vice president of the Parliamentary Assembly and who has been very diligent and again in traveling to some of these exotic locations that that nobody perhaps envies the travel to. And Congressman Chris Smith, a senior veteran House member who speaks out so eloquently and so firmly, not only for the rule of law and human rights internationally, but has actually been recognized by the Parliamentary Assembly as a special representative on the issue of human rights and trafficking. And I want to commend our colleague from the House of Representatives, Congressman Smith, Chairman Smith, for his leadership in getting passed a resolution condemning the trafficking in minors internationally, and getting the Parliamentary Assembly to take a strong statement on the record on this very serious problem that faces not only us here domestically, but also on the international. President, I want to congratulate my colleague from Iowa, a senior member of this body, someone who's respected around the globe for being willing to meet with fellow parliamentarians and so successfully put forward language that was adopted by consensus. If I could mention a couple of other matters that pertain to this trip. First of all, it's interesting, I think, that the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku, on the western shore of the Caspian Sea, would be the host of this Parliamentary Assembly. Azerbaijan is an ally of the United States, an important ally. I think it's important for Americans and for members to know that the neighbor to the north is Russia, the neighbor to the south is Iran, and this is a very, very tough neighborhood that our ally exists in. And yet, they are oriented to the West, they are oriented to the United States, they want to be allies of ours. They were steadfast friends of ours in Afghanistan and have been during the entire time that we have been there. Madam President, they're steadfast allies of the nation of Israel. And again, I think for a majority Muslim state such as Azerbaijan to take that stand in a troubling neighborhood speaks well of them. There are steps that we wish they would take further toward transparency and openness and the rule of law, and maybe their elections weren't all that we hoped for in the past, but they are an ally that continues to make progress. And so I salute our host nation. I think it should also be said, and I'll yield to Senator Cardin on this point, that we stopped back by Chisinau, Moldova, on the way back from Baku, a member of the OSCE, a nation that is also in a troubling neighborhood, that feels the breath of Moscow breathing down their collars, and the threats by people from the Russian Federation that would like to exert undue influence on that brave little nation. It happened that we were there, Madam President, on the day that the Moldovan Parliament ratified the agreement associating Moldova with the European Union. And this was a wonderful day for the Friends of Freedom and the European-oriented citizens of Moldova. It was great to see the young people walking through the city with the flags and hear Beethoven's Ode to Joy, the European anthem, as it were, and to be there for this very significant, pivotal day in the history of Moldova, and to say that we're going to continue to stand with the brave people of that country. And I know Senator Cardin was thinking of those things when he scheduled that stop for our But let me just emphasize to everyone within the sound of our voices, diplomacy and foreign policy is carried out not only by the executive branch through our State Department and through the other good offices that we have in the executive branch. Foreign policy is alive and well through the participation of members of the House and Senate in the Parliamentary Assembly, in the OSCE. It's important that we keep our role there, and so my hat is off to the leaders of this Congress, House and Senate, who have been willing over the years to exercise leadership and to earn credibility in the OSCE, and I am proud to have stood with them this year in this delegation, and I believe we came back with a better understanding. I would also I would interject that I appreciate the role of Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty in covering our participation there and in getting that out to the rest of the world. But I'm proud to have stood with this delegation, 8 members, House and Senate, senior members and relatively new ones, standing for the principles of the rule of law and transparency and democracy among our allies in Europe and Eurasia. And I yield to